You open your phone for 10 seconds just to check the time. And somehow, 20 minutes later, you're scrolling through someone else's vacation, someone else's body, someone else's life, and you feel smaller than you did before you picked up the phone. Nobody told you to compare yourself. You didn't choose to feel that way. It just happened, the way it always happens. So what's actually going on in your brain when this switch flips? Here's something most people don't realize. Comparing yourself to others isn't really a decision you make. It's closer to a reflex, something your brain does automatically before you're even aware it's happening. Psychologists call this social comparison, and it's one of the most consistent patterns found in human behavior. We don't compare ourselves because we're insecure. We compare ourselves because that's how the human brain has always measured where it stands. The question was never whether you'd compare yourself to someone. It was always going to happen. The real question is, why? To understand this, you have to think about how humans evolved. For most of human history, there was no objective way to measure how well you were doing. There was no scoreboard, no number that told you if you had enough food, enough safety, enough status. So the brain found a workaround. It started measuring you against the people around you. If you had more than your neighbor, that felt like enough. If you had less, that felt like danger. This wasn't vanity. It was survival, dressed up as a feeling. That system worked fine for thousands of years. Because for most of human history, your reference point was small. A few dozen people in your village. Maybe 100 at most. Today, your reference point is the entire planet. Every scroll puts you next to the most successful, most attractive, most accomplished version of millions of strangers. Your ancient brain doesn't know the difference between your neighbor and someone you'll never meet, living on the other side of the world. It just sees the gap and reacts the same way it always has. This is a survival system, running on data it was never built to handle. Here's something that might surprise you. Not all comparison feels the same. Psychologists describe two different directions. Upward comparison is measuring yourself against someone who seems to be doing better. It usually creates pressure, sometimes motivation, sometimes shame. Downward comparison is measuring yourself against someone who seems to be doing worse. It usually creates relief, sometimes guilt for feeling that relief at all. Most people swing between both multiple times a day without ever noticing the shift. The strange part is, neither direction tells you anything true about your actual life. They only tell you where you stand next to someone else's edited story. Here's where modern comparison becomes especially unfair. You're not actually comparing your life to someone else's life. You're comparing your full, complicated, behind-the-scenes existence to a single curated moment someone chose to share. Nobody posts the argument before the vacation photo. Nobody posts the years of struggle before the success story. Your brain doesn't naturally separate the edited version from the real one. It just absorbs the image and quietly measures your unfiltered life against someone else's highlight reel. That comparison was never fair to begin with. Here's what almost nobody talks about. Constant comparison doesn't just affect your mood for a moment. Over time, it can quietly erase your own sense of direction. When you're always looking sideways at someone else's path, it becomes harder to notice your own. Your goals start to shift, not because you actually want something different, but because someone else seems to have it. You stop asking, "What do I want?" You start asking, "What would make me look like I'm keeping up?" That's not ambition. That's a slow disconnection from yourself. Let's call him Daniel. Daniel had a job he genuinely liked until he joined a group chat with old college friends. One friend bought a house. Another got promoted. Another posted pictures from the trip Daniel could never afford that year. Nothing in Daniel's life had actually changed, but almost overnight, the job he used to enjoy started to feel small. He found himself checking that group chat constantly, each time feeling a little worse than before. It took him months to realize the problem wasn't his job. The problem was that he had quietly handed the definition of his own success over to other people's timelines. So, is there any way to use comparison without it quietly draining you? Yes, but it requires changing the question you ask. Instead of asking, "Am I behind?" try asking, "What is this feeling actually pointing toward?" If someone's success bothers you, that discomfort often holds a clue about something you genuinely want, not proof that you're failing. The goal isn't to stop noticing other people's lives completely. The goal is to stop letting their timeline quietly write the story of your own. Comparison becomes dangerous only when it replaces your own compass. So here's where this leaves us. Comparing yourself to others isn't a personal flaw. It's an ancient survival tool, doing its best to operate in a world it was never designed for. You weren't built to process millions of curated lives every single day. Nobody was. The goal was never to delete the instinct completely. It was to notice when it's running and gently ask yourself if it's actually telling you the truth. So here's the question worth sitting with. The last time you felt smaller because of someone else's life, what was it actually telling you about your own? If this video gave you something to think about, let me know in the comments. And if you want more videos that explain the psychology behind the patterns we all live with, make sure you're subscribed.